You are listening to Ideas and Leaders podcast. I'm Elena Paweta, Executive Communication Coach and TEDx organizer. With each episode, I'll share with you communication tips and ideas from top business leaders to help you excel in your career. Welcome to the next episode of Ideas and Leaders podcast. Today, my guest is Mike Acker. He's an executive communication coach. He's a keynote speaker and the author of 10 books, including the book Speak with Confidence that we're going to speak about today. Hi, Mike. It's great to have you on Ideas and Leaders.
Hey, thank you so much. Thanks, Elena, for having me. Looking forward to talking with you and to your audience today.
So, Mike, can you tell us a little bit about your story? So what led you to become a keynote speaker and a book author?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was not my plan. I mean, my original plan goes way back. I was in law school, dropped out of law school, figured out it wasn't really for me. Went into pastoral ministry for years. So did that. And then I got my reps in and really overcame some challenges in speaking. And then after doing that for 18 years, I thought, I'm ready for something different. So I went into sales. Now, the one thing that was constant for those 20 years was that I was working in communication, whether it was in sales, whether it was preaching, whether it was in college, helping my debate colleagues, or coaching business leaders. So I had this kind of side hobby that kind of paid me a little bit, just kind of fun. And then the topic that was consistently asked of me, how do I overcome my fear of speaking? How do I overcome my nervousness? That recurring theme ended up being something that I wrote down. And I kind of embraced a challenge in writing a book, wrote everything in 27 days, then spent the next 30 days editing it and drafting it, would wake up at 4:30 in the morning, take a cold shower, and then write and write and write. And then that book catapulted me into really international spotlight with it being translated into different languages. I remember I got a king of a royal or a member of a royal family reach out to me, and one of the top A-list celebrities, one of their cabinet members, reached out to me. And all of a sudden I thought, what is happening here? The side hobby was no longer so side. And as the pandemic happened and we got grounded from making our rounds in sales, I leaned into the coaching and then went full time.
Wow, this is such an inspiring story. So I think that this is the topic that many people want and need. And even those who are on a very high position, leadership position, they still feel a little bit of imposter syndrome, a little bit of fear of public speaking, of communication. So that's why I would love to ask you today about your book. So what do you think is the most important in speaking with confidence? What should we start with?
Yeah, so really there's 3 legs. And if you think about like a 3-legged stool, there's not one leg that's more important than the others. So all 3 of these are important. Now, when people think about speaking, they tend to think about one leg called skills. How do I do it? How do I do it? I want to be better. I want to perform. How do I do it? So a lot of people come to me and they say, Mike, teach me some tips, some tricks to get better. So when I put out my framework, I started the opposite way. Skills is the end. Because otherwise people jump in and, hey, you're looking good, but you're still not on the inside all put together. Think about it like this. If you go out and you get your clothes dirty, you get your body dirty, if you're smelly, you're sweaty, and you come home and you just throw on new clothes, you haven't changed the problem. You just now look better. But up close, it's still there. And a lot of people, they will work on their skills. They'll work on maybe even their messaging, but they don't work on the third component. So there's 3 sources to confidence and communication: skills, your messaging, and your identity. Think about it like this. How you say it, your skills, what you say, your message, and who says it, your identity. So after coaching hundreds of people, doing seminars, I'm doing a big speaking event next month, and on and on. After I do that again and again and again, here's what I've realized. is that this framework is unique and no one else approaches it the same way. So I put this together in my book, Speak with Confidence. It came out by a major publisher in December, and now it's been really cool to see it take off. It's got 140 something reviews on Amazon. It's been showing up on a couple best book lists. And really, it's unique because it starts with, who are you? Because that's where the imposter syndrome comes down from. You can look great, you can know what to say, but you can still not feel like you belong.
Yes, I really love your system that you come up with, because many people, when we think about speaking with confidence, we're thinking about, okay, posture, I will smile, I will do gestures, I will make a nice PowerPoint presentation, and, all of these things that are on the outside, but on the inside, we still can be very scared, and we can be disoriented and, forget everything as we go on stage. So how do you work on this identity part?
Yeah, so there's several different aspects. The first one is that a lot of people have just simply no idea who they actually are. And they might have a vague sense of who they are, but they don't have this concrete sense of who they are. So they get up on there, and that added pressure makes them lose it even more. And so you want to make sure that you know who you are off stage so you can bring that person on stage, and you want to make sure that you have peace with it. So in the book, I talk about this filter that when we look at ourselves, we really should be able to do one of three things when it comes to every aspect of who we are. We should know what we appreciate about ourselves, we should know what we accept about ourselves, and we should know what we improve about ourselves. I think this is like chapter 5 or something. And when I talk through this is so huge for a lot of my clients, because a lot of people, especially people who are inclined to get a coach, especially people who feel imposter syndrome, are super high on the improve column. So you think about it like this. If you got 3 buckets and all together they can equal 100%. So maybe one's 50, one's 25, the other one's 25. One's 70, one's 20, the other one's going to be 10. If you have too high on appreciation, now that leads to false confidence, that leads to arrogance, that leads to narcissism. So if you look at yourself, think about somebody that that just loves themselves, and they're just so impressed with everything they've done. They're a narcissist. They're super high on the appreciation bucket. Now, there are other people who are super high on the accept bucket. And so they look at their identity and they just go, that's just who I am. I was just born this way. It's just my challenges. It's just my whatever. And they have this victim mentality. So if you're super high on appreciation, you tend towards narcissism. If you're super high on acceptance, you tend towards a victim mentality. But if you're super high on improve, I'm not good enough, I got to get better. I just got to get better. They're better than me. I got to get better. I need to get better. And then it leads to this imposter syndrome. So we need a balance of these, 30, 30, 40, 33, 33, 33, sometimes 50, 25, 25. But we need a balance of what we appreciate about ourselves, what we need to accept, and what we need to improve about ourselves. So think about it like this. Elena, as we're talking, maybe you say, Mike, I bought your book. I bought Speak with Confidence. I read it and I hated it. It was useless. So I look at that, and for a lot of people, that could tear them down. It could make them feel like they didn't do well. Or somebody comes up and says, I didn't understand what you said at the end of your presentation. So you could take that criticism and go, oh my gosh, I'm a failure. Or you can filter it through the lens of, what do you think? Is it something that you appreciate about yourself, or is it not? So I look at the book and go, actually, I have grounded reason for appreciation. So it's not just my mom who likes it. It's I have grounded reason to like this. I have heard, I've known, I know the work that went into it, et cetera, et cetera. I know this is helpful. I appreciate the book. So your criticism doesn't affect me. The outside opinion, the potential opinion, the pressure from feeling like you don't belong doesn't hit me. Another example, if you think about the word accept. Now, if you decide to just level your gun at me and shoot me again with another criticism, you say, Mike, I see that you're going bald. I'd be like, oh man, Elena, first of all, that's not very nice. But second of all, I'd say, you know what? It's true. Little by little, my hair is slowly receding. My forehead's getting bigger over the course of time. And although I don't appreciate that, I'd still like to have my long blonde hair that I had as a teenager. I accept it. So your criticism doesn't hit me. I don't feel like an imposter. I don't feel like I don't belong. I don't feel like I have less value because I see that truth in me and I accept it. And then the third category, if you were to say, Mike, I looked at a picture of you from a couple of years ago, it looks like you've gained some weight. Well, first of all, what I would say is, Elena, I'd say, man, you're not being very nice to me on the host. But third of all, here's what I would say. I'd say, it's true. So I'm accepting it. But I've been running every day. And even over the last month, I've lost 5 pounds. And so in other words, I put that into the improved bucket. So if we look at our communication, if we look at our life and we put it into these different buckets, here's what I appreciate about myself. You might not appreciate it, but I do. And here's what I accept. You may have pointed out that that's a weakness of mine, and I agree, and I've made peace with it. And others may notice, and I notice that I need to improve this in this area, and I have a plan to improve. I can't put everything in improve because some things don't need to be approved. They need to be appreciated. And sometimes you're working on too many things at once, and so you get nowhere. So sometimes it might be temporarily in the accept bucket. You know what? Right now, I accept this aspect of my communication, but I'm improving this aspect. And once I improve this, I'll put that into my appreciate bucket. I'll take something out of my accept bucket and I'll put it into my improve bucket. And there's this constant movement of growth, appreciation, and acceptance. And when we do that, we look at our life and we have an answer for everything that might happen. And we go into a room and we feel like we're an imposter. And we go, why do we feel that way? Well, they have more success than me. Currently, they do. Currently, they have 10 years, 20 years more success. Okay, put that in the accept bucket. You're 20 years younger. You're an other right now. What can you improve? Well, one of the things that they do really well is this. Okay, great. I'm going to improve that one specific area. Meanwhile, I'm going to appreciate what got me to the table in the first place. And when you can filter your life through this, it's an incredible perspective, incredible outlook to really know what to appreciate about your identity, what to accept about your identity, and what to approve about your identity.
It's a really great three points. I think that we can recommend our listeners to write those things down, to just what do we like about ourselves, what do we accept about ourselves, and what do we want to improve right now, what do we want to focus on. I think that this exercise is really powerful because many people, they're just focusing on the negatives. They're not focusing on those 3 things. They're focusing on how bad they are or what can go wrong, and they are imagining and drawing all of those negative scenarios. As I mentioned before we started the recording, I'm a TEDx organizer, and before going out on the stage, many TEDx speakers, they are getting so vulnerable. Before going out on a huge stage, they're like, oh, I look bad, but my knees are shaking and this and that. So they completely forget that they have an amazing message to share, that they are amazing people because they, in the first place, they got invited to such an important stage. So I think that many people, and all of us, basically, we get such moments where the mind goes blank before a very important meeting, important conversation, a TED Talk. And we are just thinking that everything will go wrong, and we're getting this imposter syndrome. So do you have any tips for such situations?
Yeah. So when it comes to speaking, first of all, and this comes up in my first book, and it's called Speak with No Fear. And in that I say this, there's 7 strategies to overcome fear of speaking. And one of them is, it's not about you. In this moment right now, it's not about me. Nobody tuned in to Elena's podcast, Ideas and Leaders, and thought, I'm going to show up to encourage Mike. Now, I'm sure you're a nice person. I'm sure you're a kind person. And now that I say it, you're like, well, I want to encourage Mike. But you didn't come to the podcast to be there for Mike. You didn't come to the podcast to be there for Elena. Well, maybe your mom, maybe a loved one, but you came here for you. The reason you turned on this podcast is because you, the listener, you, the viewer, wanted to improve, wanted to grow, wanted to gain insight. And that is okay. Audience members are inherently selfish in a good way. You're in charge of your own growth. So you go somewhere so you can grow. You don't show up at class to make the professor feel good. You show up to class to get what you need so that you can grow, so that you can get to that next level. That's why you go. Now, what does that mean? That means that the speaker, people are not thinking about me. People are not thinking, now that I say it, now you're starting to think about me, but people don't care what you look like, as long as you're not distracting. Now, if I was waving my hair or saying tons of ums or doing anything extremely distracting, sure, then you think about it. But most of the time you're thinking about, does this help me? Is this good for me? So what does that do for a speaker? That means that we have a lot less pressure on ourselves than we think. People are not worried about us. They're not thinking about as long as it's not crazy, they're not thinking about our hair, our clothes, our voice, our appearance. They are thinking about themselves. So if we go in and we go, it's not about me. I'm going to go in there to help others. I'm going to this TEDx. Yeah, I want to do a great job. Yeah, I want to represent myself well. But as long as I'm not distracting, people are just really interested about them. So how can I serve them? So I gave a TEDx talk, and I really think it's important to do virtual communication the right way. So I talked about it. And it's been really cool to see some people say, well, that was really helpful. And it's gained now not tons of views, but I think we're at 60,000 or something. And it's cool to see people say that was helpful. I never thought about it like that. That's great. And that's what we're going for as a communicator. So that's a huge part of speaking. Now, in terms of the imposter syndrome, that's a question of value. Often the reason why we have imposter syndrome is because we place value on others and we don't place value on ourselves. So a great classic example of this is, I'm going to go talk to the executive team. And I go talk to the executive team and I feel out of place. I feel like I don't belong because they're the executives. They're the people who have the money and the power and this and this and this. And me, I'm just me. And so we look at ourselves and we look at them and we change the value. So really, when it comes to imposter syndrome, that kind of situation is to identify your value and really know who you are and what you have and what makes you important, valuable, needed, and a good part of the team. And if you can't do that, then yeah, okay, maybe you may move on to something else. But really, you can. If you got a place at the table, think through why people valued you so much to put you there, and then embrace that and lean into it.
Yeah, it is very good to change the point of view a little bit. And even listening to you right now, you're so inspiring. And I'm like, yes, people are just for the message. They're not here for me. And I think that we need to just remind ourselves those things, because those are such basic things. And we are doing this ourselves when we're listening to lectures, to podcasts. We are thinking about ourselves. So it is very important to think about it. And there are some situations, sometimes we face negativity from others. Sometimes the audience, they are not very receptive, and we see those faces in the audience that are not super welcoming. It happens in business. It happens very often when we're introducing some information that is negative. Sometimes we even face criticism, open criticism, that people just don't like what we are saying. So how can we maintain confidence in such situation?
Yeah. So one is, don't trust the nonverbals of other people, because people do not know how to represent themselves nonverbally. As long as you're prepared, as long as you know that what you're saying is good stuff, that something someone needs, it's a valuable lesson, it's a valuable product, it's a valuable service, whatever it is that you're talking about. And as long as you know your value, hold yourself with confidence. So you go in, and this happened to me before. I've spoken at audiences where people's faces are scrunched up. I've spoken to audiences where people are looking away. And then they come up afterwards like, oh, that was the best speech ever. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That was amazing. And I really needed that. And they'll go back to say some of the things I said verbatim. I've also spoken in audiences where people look like they're really into it and you don't know if they are. So here's what I say. If you know your value, so you know who you are, you know your identity, you're secure in who you are, you know what to appreciate, what to accept, what to improve. You got a good identity, you go in there. If you are prepared, now, if you are not prepared, you have no reason to be confident. Now, you might be prepared because you've been doing the same lecture for 20 years. So sure, you didn't rehearse it, but you have 20 years of preparation. So there are some of the talks that I can give, and I can give them off the cuff because it's not off the cuff. That's 20 years of talking about it. So I'm not talking about that. But if you truly are not prepared, you haven't put the time in, you have a TEDx, you've written it, you've practiced it 10 times, you're not prepared. You shouldn't go in there feel confident. But if you have prepared it, you've worked through it, you've rehearsed it, you've gone through, you've worked with a coach, you've rehearsed, and then you go, okay, then go in there. If you know you have valuable content, you're prepared, and you know your own value, then lean in regardless of their leaning. So if they look like they're not leaning in, you still lean in. Don't give into the temptation to believe what you see on the outside, because it does not always represent what's on the inside.
Yes, I had a couple of such situations with students as I work at the university. And I remember when I started working at the university, students did not use the devices back then. And it was like something weird when a student would use a phone or a laptop during the class. And now everyone is using it because they're looking for something, or they are typing, they don't write, they type. And I had a couple of situations like that when students are just sitting in their laptops and doing something, and I have no idea whether they like it or not. And after the class, they're like, thank you so much. It was so valuable. It was an amazing class. It was the best. And I was like, really? I was hoping that you're noticing me here. So this is, I think that such situations, they just show us that how people behave, it has nothing to do with what they actually think, right?
It's absolutely true. And now we need to be in charge of our nonverbals, but we shouldn't worry about their nonverbals. So I'm in charge of my nonverbals, using smile, open expression, moving in, leaning in, not crossing off my body, showing that I'm engaged. I'm in charge of that, but I'm not in charge of others. And I'm not going to, maybe they weren't taught good nonverbals. Maybe they never learned that. Maybe they didn't have a good representation of that. For me, I'm teaching my son good nonverbals. I'm like, okay, the way that you're using your tone of voice right now, the way that that sounds is this. Is that what you mean? No? Okay, then let's change your tone. How can you sound more excited about whatever you're saying? Oh, like this? Like, okay, that's a little bit better. So I'm teaching him because I'm responsible for my family, for my upbringing, but a lot of people aren't doing that. So they're picking up what's around them. They're doing what's around them. So we can't, just like we can't take charge of other people's kids, we can't take charge of their grown kids who are now doing nonverbals that are not helpful. But you can take charge of your own mindset. Okay, I know my value. I know that what I'm saying, what I'm selling, what I'm talking about is important, and I'm prepared. Okay, I'm going to lean in.
Yes, yeah. This is so funny, Mike, that you mentioned that you're coaching your son, because I'm coaching my daughters all the time. I'm like, how can you tell a different argument to persuade me that you have to go to cinema with your friends?
Yeah.
Like, why, really, Mom? You're coaching me again?
Yeah, you don't know that, they don't know that you're setting them up for future success right there.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is. I think that this is so important. Communication skill for young audiences is so important. We need to have more of this at schools, at the universities, and this is one of the things that I'm doing. Is I'm trying to educate young audiences more on this.
Yeah,
so, Mike, the last question that I wanted to ask you, the last topic that I wanted to cover, is about the messaging. So you covered the identity, You covered the skills, more or less, the non-verbal skills that we need to think about. So what about the messaging? What can we do to make our message really stand out?
Yeah. So if you think about two different spheres, I got one hand up over here on the right sphere. I got one left on the left sphere. So let's say that over here on the left side is all of the amazing content I know. So let's choose the topic of psychology. I've read about psychology. I know psychology. I've done a master's on psychology. I know a ton of stuff about psychology. Now on the right side is the organization of that. So I might know a lot here on the left side, but might not have it organized out all on the right side. Now, let's go the other way around here. Let's say I have very, very little bit of information on the topic, but I really know how to organize content. So this might be about marketing. Yeah, me personally, I know some about marketing, but I don't know theory of this, that, this. I don't know tons. I don't have degrees on it, but I know enough about it to make some comments. But on the right side, I know how to organize content. Now, who's going to be better at providing an answer? Me, because I have a way to message to organize than the person who knows everything but can't organize it. So sometimes people have so much in their brain and you ask them a question and it's just like you open up a torrent and either they don't know what to say or they say too much or they ramble or they don't have any way to organize. So they're grabbing from here to here to here to here. And just so much stuff comes out. The better for you to know some and know great ways to organize your messaging. Even better, know a lot and know how to organize. So here, as we're talking, Elena's asking me different questions, and I could talk about communication. There's workshops I do that are 6, 7, 8 hours long. I can do communication about all kinds of different areas. We can go to styles, blah, 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 blah. So a lot of different content, and I could answer the questions different ways, but I'm picking and choosing and organizing it in such a way so that the audience can understand. Now, that's the ideal. You have someone who has a whole bunch of information and has messaging systems. Most of the time, people have a good amount of information or a lot of information and bare minimum of getting it out there and making sure it's understood. So those people need to learn messaging systems, how to organize their content so it gets out and gets understood.
Yeah, this is a key to effective communication and messaging. I think that this is one of the secrets of the popularity of TED Talks, because they are focused on ideas worth spreading. And when I'm working with TEDx speakers, we are discussing the main idea, the main message that they want to share. And it is sometimes so hard. People want to speak about everything they know, and we need to focus. We need to only speak about one or two things, just as we do on this podcast. I mean, you're an author of multiple books. I'm sure that you could talk about communication for days, but here we are just speaking about those main points. And this is so clear and so understandable for our listeners. So it is so important to just focus on one idea and to make it understandable, to structure what we say. So Mike, to sum up our conversation, I love communication topic and I could talk about it for hours, but we have limited amount of time on the podcast. So if you could sum up and give our listeners the several calls to action, what can they do to become more confident speakers?
Yeah. First of all, you need awareness. You need awareness of what you're doing. So watch yourself, record yourself. So once you are aware of what you're doing, then you can get the right knowledge. Maybe you're aware that you're using a lot of fillers. Maybe you're aware that you ramble. Maybe you're aware that you're insecure. Then get the right knowledge. So get a book, Speak with Confidence by Mike Acker, published by Wiley. Get that one. Reach out to Dr. Elena, work with her, get some other books, some podcasts. Get the knowledge targeted at what you're working through. And then from there, practice it. A knowledge without implementation does not equal more muscle. It just equals more fat. You get more and more mental knowledge. You get bigger and bigger, but you're not getting stronger and stronger. So you got this awareness, you got this knowledge, you got this practice. And then as you practice, make sure you get feedback to make sure you're practicing the right way. Imagine me going, you know what, my jump shot in basketball is not that good. I watch some YouTube videos. I watch some people play. Then I go practice every day. After I've practiced shooting 1,000 basketball shots in that way, I'm like, oh, I feel pretty good. And then I go, and maybe I turned out that I got the wrong knowledge. maybe I lost track of the right knowledge, and I started practicing the wrong way, and I got bad form. So I need to get feedback so that I'm aware again, get the next right knowledge I need, and move on from there. So for you, are you aware of what you're doing? Get awareness. If you're aware, get the right knowledge. Read that book, that podcast, that coach. If you know what you're needing to do, then put into practice. 2 to 10 minutes a day changes your life.
Perfect. Thank you so much for those valuable tips. So if our listeners want to buy your book, Speak with Confidence, or to contact you, to reach out to you, where can they find you and the book?
Yeah, you can go to www.mikeacker.com. So that's ACKER, mikeacker.com. My book is on Amazon. It's been on Target. It's been in Barnes & Noble. My wife and I, we were in Manhattan. I picked it up at the store. Just walked in at Barnes & Noble and picked it up off the shelf. So Speak with Confidence in lots of bookstores. It's going to be really life-changing. A lot of people, someone reached out to me on LinkedIn the other day and just said, hey, I got your book. Life-changing. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. I will definitely put the link with your book under the episode in the show notes. And you're on LinkedIn also, right?
Yes, I am. Yep. LinkedIn, Instagram. It's all going to be Mike Acker, .com, mikeacker.com.
Perfect. So everything will be in the show notes. Thank you very much, Mike, for being on Ideas and Leaders. It was such a pleasure talking to you about communication and speaking with confidence.
Thank you. I really appreciate being on it.
Thank you for listening to Ideas and Leaders podcast. Did you enjoy this episode? Let me know that you listened by tagging me in your LinkedIn profile and using a hashtag Ideas and Leaders. See you in the next episode.